Hello and welcome to another edition of URCA 360, where we talk all things URCA. I'm Juan McCartney, the Corporate and Consumer Relations Manager here at the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority. Joining us today is Regulatory Manager Legal Avrom Thompson, who is our resident legal expert on the new Natural Gas Act. So, Avram, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can explain to us what the Natural Gas Act is, sort of the timeline of it, and what it now does in terms of IRCA's regulatory oversight.
Okay, thanks. Well, the Natural Gas Act 2024 came into force on June 1st. And so with that act coming into force, there is now a regulatory and legal framework for the use and regulation of natural gas in the Bahamas. And so that act establishes IRCA as the independent regulator of the natural gas sector. And the Gas Act or the Natural Gas Act focuses on safety, making sure that regulations are also in place that deal with fair play in the market and economic regulation, as well as environmental concerns, that IRCA can establish regulations to put all of these things in place.
So, one of the big focuses of the Natural Gas Act would be to facilitate the use of LNG. So, what does that framework look like now?
So right now, the framework, like I said, establishes IRCA as the independent regulator. There are requirements in the act on licensing of different providers. So IRCA regulates the import, the transport, the pipelines, all of those things associated with natural gas. So when natural gas is shipped to the country, IRCA regulates that aspect of it. When the natural gas is transferred from the ship to the land-based facility, IRCA regulates that. When it is then conveyed from that facility, whether by pipeline or by truck to the consumer, which in this case would be the power companies, IRCA also regulates that. And the act sets the framework for that. And what IRCA is currently doing is then giving the framework more granularity by issuing regulations. And so in issuing those regulations, IRCA has the ability then to collaborate with local and international bodies to make sure that the day-to-day regulation, licensing of the sector is accomplished.
So currently, the regulations are being developed. When can we expect to hear more about that? When could we look forward to the public being able to see, for consultative purposes, et cetera, what IRCA is proposing? How's that going?
So the documents are in their latter phase of the internal IRCA development, and IRCA has a public consultation procedure. So the IRCA Act, as well as the Natural Gas Act, and really all the legislation that governs IRCA, requires IRCA, when matters are of public importance, to give the public an opportunity to provide feedback. And so what IRCA has done is IRCA has developed a standard consultation procedure where we would issue the draft regulation along with a cover document that assists the public in understanding what that regulation or other regulatory measure speaks about. And so IRCA has developed a standard 30-day minimum feedback period where the document goes out to the public, and the public can then comment, make suggestions, and basically give their input into the document. Once we get that input, we consider it and we would make a decision as to whether to accept or to modify what the general public, including the stakeholders themselves, such as potential licensees, have to say about the document. In terms of concrete dates of when the publications or when the consultations would be issued, we envision that being done in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. So when we're looking at developing the regulations, et cetera, you could explain to the public a little bit about how IRCA does that. We benchmark against other jurisdictions. We also look specifically at our archipelago. Could you just break down for them kind of how we look at developing that framework?
So, like you said, we would benchmark against other jurisdictions. Two of the major jurisdictions that have comparative regulatory frameworks surrounding natural gas, and in particular, liquefied natural gas or LNG, would be Singapore and the US, as well as other Caribbean countries. But a lot of the framework has in relation to what is being proposed, for example, as relation to safety standards and like fire safety surrounding LNG, comes from like the NFPA, which is the American body that sets standards in relation to safety and in particular like gas. And so that is a code that actually is already used in the Bahamas. So, for example, when you look at the building code that the Ministry of Works issues, it references the NFPA. And so this is something that would not be new to persons. Well, in essence, LNG in its entirety is new to the Bahamas, but it would be that code or that system is not entirely new to the jurisdiction.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Avram. We'll look forward to hosting you again when we are doing some public consultation on those documents. But I just wanted to give you guys out there an idea of what URCA is now engaged in terms of natural gas. That'll be regulated.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right. Thanks. This has been URCA 360. We'll see you guys next time around.